Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the quote-unquote new Roshambo wheel. First and foremost though, they added teleporters to the District of the Stars. I don't know when that happened, but like, thank God for that. Like, dude, it's so good that they have these now. Anyway, the new Roshambo wheel. So, in the Selenopolis update at the end of the last year, they added more positive auras, but also negative auras, and we are in the District of the Stars today just to sort of talk about that and what the future of the Magic Wheel is going to look like, because, you know, the Roshambo Wheel, as we know, has existed for a long time, since like 2022, something like that. No, it's 2021 when it got added. But that has changed how the developers sort of make new content for Wiz just drastically. And with that in mind, of course, many of us know what is on the existing Roshambo wheel. Of course, Fire owns... So every school owns a hanging effect. So Fire owns damage over times, Ice owns shields, Storm owns blades, Myth owns traps, Death owns weaknesses, or quote-unquote curses, because infections apply too. Life owns heal over times, and Balance does not own an effect, but is like the jack of all trades. It's like it can leverage every effect. For a while, though, that effect was pips, and thank God that's not a thing anymore. But anyway, in the Selenopolis update, the developers have officially added auras, or Star School identity to this Roshambo wheel. And I'm on my Storm Wizard today because Storm is the anchor point on the wheel for things like for Star Magic. So Storm both owns positive auras. If I go over and find my Rusalka's Wrath, Storm owns positive auras, and we know this because the school that owns a positive, or the school that just owns an effect, will get spells that that apply a chromatic version of that effect. So it's like if a Death were to use Rusalka's Wrath, it would give a 40% Death outgoing damage aura for 4 rounds, and you know, if a Storm obviously used it, it would give a Storm aura for 4 rounds. So it applies to the caster's school. That's just kind of how that works, and Storm, as we can see, owns that. So Storm owning negative or positive auras, rather, not negative auras, shows that it is the anchor point, and Death is the school that owns negative auras, and that would make sense because Death counters positive auras and owns negative auras. Ice also counters negative auras, because, you know, Storm owns all auras. So if we look, and maybe, okay, yeah. So negative auras, right. So I meant to mention this along with Rusalka, but Storm also owns negative auras. I should have said that. I worded that really poorly. But anyway, we're here now. Storm owns negative auras because this will put a minus 40% weakness aura on the target for 4 rounds. Iron Sultan will do that. So with that in mind, as we see, Storm owns both positive and negative auras, which means that Storm is the anchor point for any and all auras on the wheel. So what this means is Storm owns positive aura generation, and Life also has positive aura generation because Death owns like negative aura. Wow, this is more convoluted than I expected. This must be how most people feel hearing about Roshambo stuff. But Death owns negative. Wow, I can't speak. Death owns positive aura destruction. So, you know, Death has cards like Monster Mash, which I don't have here, but Monster Mash will delete a positive aura for a minus 70% chromatic weakness. So that is one thing that Death can do. So because Death counters. Obviously, death counters life, so life having positive auras, that's just how the wheel works. I will try to make a graphic to put on the screen throughout this video, detailing just where all of the new effects are going to land. But for the star version, life and storm own positive aura generation, death and storm own negative aura generation. And because ice counters death as well as storm, ice owns negative aura countering with a card like Shoe, which, do I have any Shoe spell limits on me? I do not. That's sick. Anyway, but yeah, so that's kind of how that works. So ice and death counter positive auras, and then storm can generate both positive and negative auras, and then life can generate positive auras, death can generate negative auras. I don't know. I'm gonna hope the graphic sort of pulls my weight for me, because like Roshambo stuff is very confusing and convoluted, but I like to think I understand it well enough. So yeah, that's the point of the video. But with that in mind, that is where auras fall. And as we can see from things like Star Blade, this pretty much means it's like life, death, and storm. This is the star triad. Similar to how like Spirit is myth, life, and death. Of course, life, death, and storm, that's for star. So yeah, that's the astral triad. Just something to point out. So yeah, that's just how it goes. So with that, wow, that was probably a poor explanation of who owns what aura, but let's now move on to the other two astral schools, because of course this is not going to end with just auras. There's still the sun and moon schools to go over, and let's just talk about those and what their hanging effects are going to be going forward. So there are 4 remaining quote-unquote effects that have not been given to a school for their identity or anything of that nature, and they are as follows: polymorphs, minions, bubbles, and afterlives. Beast Moon players will know about afterlives and plenty about that. But for the Moon School, it's more or less narrowed down to 2 things, and those, of course, being polymorphs and minions. Now, minions is more of a myth school thing than anything, and I'm not really expecting minions to be the Moon School effect, but as we can see by just coming down here in the portico, we can go to this Moon School trainer, and as you can see, I mean, everybody who's played through the game knows that the Moon School in general is all about polymorphs, and so this is what we can expect the Moon School's effect to be. It's going to be polymorphs, and that I can say without a doubt. And this one is very clear-cut. Ice will be owning polymorphs, similar to how Storm pretty much is the anchor point for auras. So Ice is going to own positive polymorphs and negative polymorphs. And then, of course, Fire is going to counter negative polymorphs. That, I think, is how it's going to work. And then, so is Myth, of course. But Myth, it's going to look similar. It's going to be what I was talking about for auras, but just shifted over. So Ice will own both positive and negative polymorphs, similar to how Storm has Iron Sultan for owning negative auras and Rusalka's Wrath for owning positive auras. So we may very well see Ice is going to own positive polymorphs, like we see here. Like, I don't know. The problem with this, obviously, is that polymorphs are dead useless. The devs are really going to have to finagle with this to make polymorphs useful at all. But more or less, that's kind of just how it's going to go. Ice is going to own positive and negative polymorphs. Death will also have positive polymorphs as a Moon School, similar to how Life has positive auras as a Star School. And then Myth is going to be able to counter both. And this is something I should have mentioned. for the Death School as well, but with the recent addition of Poison, that pretty much cements the fact that Death counters both positive and negative auras, of course being, you know, just right there next to Storm on the wheel. So yeah, it's like that sort of fits in. So it's like Ice will have Thieving Dragon and Shoe to counter both positive and negative auras. Death will have Monster Mash and Poison also to counter positive and negative auras. So similarly, Myth is going to have a card that counters positive and negative polymorphs. But Fire is only going to have a card that counters negative polymorphs, because Myth is going to be able to have negative polymorphs. Yeah, because I think that's how that works. Yeah, Myth is going to have negative polymorphs, so a Myth is just going to be turning you into things, but Fire can counter that, as Fire will be able to counter Myth and Ice, of course. So that's how that's going to work. Yeah, again, it's going to be convoluted, but Fire will be able to counter negative polymorphs, and positive polymorphs. Wow, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, because there will be an arrow pointing to Ice from Fire. Fire will counter both positive and negative polymorphs. Myth will be able to do the same, but Myth is going to have negative polymorphs be part of their identity, similar to how Death has negative auras being part of their identity. So there's that. And then Ice, of course, is going to be the anchor school. Ice is going to have, you know, obviously positive and negative polymorphs. And then Death is also going to have positive polymorphs. So that's where it's going to be. That's where things are going to end up. I'm really just going to be leaning on this graphic that now I know I have to make for this entire video. It'll just be off to the right side. That's just what I'm going to have to do, because this is so confusing. But basically, if I ever say something really, really confusing, just look off to the right side of your screen. Like, that's where the graphic is going to be. So yep, that'll probably wrap up the Moon School. So just once more to go over it. Ice will be the anchor point and own both positive and negative polymorphs, just like Storm owns positive and negative auras. Fire will counter both positive and negative polymorphs, so will Myth. But Myth will own negative polymorphs, and Death will own positive polymorphs. That's how it goes. That's where it's at. So that's all that I can really say about that without making it way too confusing. So, with that in mind, let's move on to the Sun School. So, as I'm sure we are all aware by this point, the Sun School is all about, so far, of course, the Sun School is all about these enchants to, you know, buff the damage on your spells. So, all of the fist enchants, and just augmentation of your existing cards. So that's, of course, you know, Sharpened Blade and all of that, and you know, that's just the whole thing. That is what Sun has been about up to now. But what we can expect, like I said when I started to talk about the Moon School, is just the fact that there's 4 effects that have not been given to school yet. Obviously, you know, bubbles, or minions rather, and polymorphs have been sort of talked about at this point, and you know, there's that. But yeah, so polymorphs obviously going to be for Moon, but that leaves us with bubbles and afterlives. And afterlives have been around in the game for a while. Guardian Spirit has been just the afterlife spell in the game. Life has had that since Avalon in 2012, and that's just sort of been it, but it was banned from PvP a while ago because, obviously, you know, afterlives are a little hard to balance. But even still, what else are they going to do? And there has been speculation that bubbles are going to be that effect, but I don't buy it. I am not really expecting to see bubbles be the effect, because the developers already don't like bubbles and global effects and all that. it would be fitting, but it's got to be something that's tied to the Sun Triad. And of course, the Sun Triad is fire, life, and myth. And just like with auras and the Star Triad and the Moon Triad, the Elemental School here is going to be the anchor point. So this, in this case, is going to be fire. So I've talked with members of the community that have done a lot of advanced content in their time, and we agree that rather than bubbles, it is going to be afterlives. That's going to be the effect that we see attached to the Sun School. I'm not sure how this is going to go, and it could, of course, be eventually that it does use bubbles for some reason. I'm not really expecting that to happen. There was actually a Thunderman spell limit path teased during a test realm some time ago, where it had a B path that deleted a bubble for a 55 blade. And that, of course, did not make it to live realm, and, for good reason. I wouldn't expect it to. But the main deal with that was that fueled speculation for a while that, bubbles would be the Sun effect. Because, of course, people were saying, like, fire would own bubbles or something like that, when really I think they just tacked it onto Thunderman just because. But let's get back to afterlives, because afterlives, that's what most people think are going to be the Sun effect. We know a lot about positive afterlives already, Guardian Spirit, of course, being a whole thing. Fire is going to own positive and negative afterlives, of course, and then life is also going to own those, but that leaves us with negative afterlives, and I don't know about all that. Fire and life, from, if the others have been any indication, Storm has owned positive and negative auras, Death has had, let me backtrack. So life looks like it's going to own positive afterlives. That's sort of a given. But yeah, okay, so fire is going to own both positive and negative afterlives. We still don't know what negative afterlives are going to look like. I think there's been some Beast Moon cards that deal with that in some form or fashion, but I mean, like, positive and negative afterlives, that's going to be a fire thing. And since life is the school behind fire on the wheel, life is going to own positive afterlives just as they always have. But myth is going to I could just be screwing this up completely, but just look at the graphic. that's how it's going to go. Myth is going to be able to, similar to how, okay, so Myth is ahead of fire. Myth is going to have positive afterlives, just as part of that Sun Triad. But it's looking like Storm is going to be able to counter both kinds of afterlives, just like how it works with the Roshambo wheel. Storm counters fire. That means Storm is going to counter fire's new Roshambo effect. So Storm countering afterlives, that would make sense. So Storm will be able to counter both kinds of afterlives, and then it looks like life is going to be able to do the same, because fire is the anchor point, of course. Okay, so now it's starting to feel less confusing, I hope, because, Storm and life counter fire. Fire owns both afterlives. Storm and life, those are going to be the two schools that counter afterlives. So Myth is going to own positive afterlives. Life owning negative afterlives, with just how the wheel is supposed to look from the way things are looking. I mean, I don't know how that's going to look. But overall, I mean, just have a look at the graphic. That's all that there really is to it. So yeah, that's more or less the new Roshambo wheel. So it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be very confusing, but I mean there are 6 new hanging effects coming to this Roshambo wheel, and yeah, it's like Roshambo 2 is what this is all about. I hope I did a good enough job of explaining it. I know I probably confused a lot of y'all, but that's what the graphic is for. So just think about what schools already counter which schools, and then you'll see just sort of which schools are going to counter their new Roshambo effects. So with that being said, thank y'all for watching and bearing with me throughout this video. I'm still learning about it myself, and of course 4 of these new 6 hanging effects are not in the game yet. We could expect maybe the Moon School update to come this fall with Darkmoor. That's not confirmed, of course, like this is just speculation, but if the Aura update came with Selenopolis, it stands to reason that they would start to add the new hanging effects just in a timely fashion, and I think that would happen with Darkmoor rather than some off-cycle update. So, with that being said, thank y'all for watching. I've been Ice Gold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more. And I will see y'all later.